Hi everyone, our geography title is How Bilateral Flows of People Cause Interdependence Between Laos and Thailand. So some quick definitions before we start. A bilateral flow is a flow between two countries.
An economic migrant is someone who migrates voluntarily to improve their standard of living.
And interdependency is where two locations are mutually reliant on one another. So as a quick introduction, Laos is a small communist state found in the southeast of Asia, bordering Thailand to the west, Vietnam to the east, and Cambodia to the south.
Since the deposition of the monarchy in 1975, a communist regime has been installed here, which has heralded years of economic isolation, right up until around the early 1990s, when the fall of the Soviet Union led to a broadening of the national economy.
Despite this economic diversification, Laos industry remains dominated by agriculture. In fact, 80% of Laotians still live in rural areas and work in farming, and this lack of economic opportunity, as we will see, has acted as a catalyst for bilateral economic migration to neighbouring states, particularly Thailand, in search of employment opportunities.
So, Thailand is an emerging developing country and a neighbouring state of Laos, and has made remarkable socio-economic progress and impressive poverty reduction in recent decades.
This is partly due to the interdependence that economic cooperation between Thailand and surrounding states has brought. Thailand's economy grew at an average annual rate of 7.5% in the boom years of 1960 and 1996, leading to a present GDP of $522 billion US.
Unlike Laos, more than half of the population lives in urban areas, and economic growth has helped pull millions of people out of poverty. As previously mentioned, the narrow economic base in Laos has acted as a significant push factor in encouraging inter-regional flows of economically active migrants to Thailand, as the hegemony farming holds over the industry here offers little prospective economic growth. Less than 15% of Laotians work in a job that earns a set salary.
This is especially significant in the context of the enormously high rates of rural poverty in Laos, which is almost 3 times higher than in rural areas, with a total of over 18% of families living below the poverty line in 2018.
Furthermore, the established and successful migrant corridor between the two countries, promoted by social globalization and strong cultural links between Laos and Thailand, further boosts immigration as it becomes a less daunting undertaking.
For example, in 2013, there were over 930,000 Laotians living in Thailand.
Pull factors to Thailand include the relative increase in salary. In Thailand, minimum wage is, as of 2020, around 313 to 336 baht per day, depending on the province, compared to Laos' roughly 150 baht per day, and the insatiable demand for low-skilled workers in Thailand's emerging economy suits the skill set of Laotian migrants.
The excess earnings that migrants generate can be sent back as remittances to Laos, which is a crucial element underpinning the Laotian economy, because it forms 7% of total GDP, and a total of $331 million US is remitted every year, particularly to impoverished rural families, where it can be then invested in the local economies to trigger a positive multiplier effect, including improvements to local infrastructure and services.
Laos has been historically politically isolated. Its communist past has served to limit the establishment of international political ties and physical links to neighbouring states.
However, flows of migrants has led to the need for increased dialogue between Laos and Thailand to both protect migrants whilst furthering economic growth.
One example of this is the Thai-Lao railway links. The Thai and Lao governments signed an agreement on the 20th of March 2004 to build the railway line from the middle of the Friendship Bridge to join Thailand and Laos together.
The role of remittance in fostering the Laotian economy cannot be understated, as it accounts for 7% of GDP and subsidises lacking government welfare schemes to support impoverished rural families.
It can also be argued that Laotian migrants returning from Thailand also gain relevant skills. For example, over 35% of returning migrants suggested they had improved language skills, and 22% suggested they had improved business skills.
However, the Laotian government does not currently have the mechanisms to fully exploit the advantages of migration, and it can be argued that Thailand is disproportionately benefiting from this bilateral corridor.
The growth the Laotian economy has experienced in relation to GDP of 11.9% a year from 2011 to 2014 is not accompanied by an associated reduction in poverty, and consumption growth disproportionately benefits richer quintiles of Laotians.
Furthermore, the loss of skilled labour such as carpentry to Thailand has actually led to labour shortages in areas of Laos due to wage differentials, and the Laotian garment industry is struggling as a result of loss of labour to Thailand.
Is crucial to maintaining economic growth and stability, filling the prodigious demand for employment in unskilled services.
Furthermore, increased tax revenue due to the larger workforce results in higher levels of governmental income to invest in social and public infrastructure, such as the expansion in health insurance and social securities Thailand has recently seen.
However, it can be argued that overwhelming immigration may have led to increased competition for employment for existing communities.
Some have also suggested that since migrants are willing to work for less, this lowers the minimum wage threshold, causing tensions between stakeholders, indirectly causing increased rates of poverty.
The high fertility rate in Laos of 2.7 has led to on average about 25,000 people aged 15 to 18 entering the labour market each year, placing stress on limited domestic economic opportunities and leading to greater levels of economic immigration to Thailand.
However, the insufficient and ineffective governmental migration policies have led to high levels of undocumented migrants, leaving Laotian migrants vulnerable to the exploitation and human trafficking.
This in turn has led to the need for increased dialogue and interdependency between Laos and Thailand to both protect migrants while furthering economic growth.
For example, the Commit initiative against trafficking has combined efforts to form a trans-governmental scheme to prevent trafficking and protect victims of exploitation, increasing collaboration between the two states. Overall, we think that bilateral flows of economic migrants has caused an interdependent relationship between Laos and Thailand. We see this in the economic benefits both countries receive and the actions they take to promote the relationship. However, we also think that to an extent this relationship is rather one-sided.
We see this in the economic trade relationships between the two countries, such as 57.1% of Laos imports are from Thailand, as well as 47.2% of their exports. However, Thailand only imports 1.53% and exports 1.38% from Laos.
This suggests that Laos is a lot more dependent on Thailand than Thailand is on Laos, therefore suggesting that although bilateral flows of economic migrants have created interdependency between the two countries, there is a significant disparity in the extent to which each country is individually independent on each other. However, this is just what we think. What do you think? Thank you so much for listening, and if you'd like to know more, we've put some links down below for you to click on.